I sleep through class and I don't have all the numbers or my homework done. We're going to cover Section 6 in due diligence in the contract. And there's a monster in your backyard, and you probably paid extra to own it. On today's Unnamed Real Estate Podcast. Well, it's 15 minutes late and we got a show to do, so let me just close all this stuff out in the background you can't see. Hello there, people. This is Charles Ray Dawson, associate broker with ProStar Realty here in Phoenix, Arizona. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, and today is, it's Thursday, and I'm dropping the recordings and whatnot, and going through the course of the day. It's interesting. You wake up in the morning. I was out late last night drinking, carousing, partying at the karaoke bar, and I was got in this conversation with various people, and I made one of my famous, prophecies. Something in the context of, well, if I was a bad guy, this is what I'd be doing. Wake up this morning and realize, oh wow, hey, the bad guys must have been sitting at the table next to me because they did exactly what I was saying was going to happen. So. Sort of puts a whole downer on the whole week. But not a lot of real estate news going on right now. We are still trying to hear from SCOTUS which way they're going to go on the rentals. Various lower courts are ruling one way or the other. They do need to come up with an answer sooner or later, so we're still on an eternal hold there. Earlier this week, I did register and was set up to listen to Tina over at the Cromford Report, and then got involved in a side project and whatnot. And next thing you know, I realized I'd worked my way right through it. So I do have the regular numbers and whatnot, and they're still turning around. It's more listings out there. Looks like a little bit less buyer action going on. So we are getting back to a more normal season, more normal market, and earlier this week, I had lunch with a friend, and she's an emergency room nurse, and we were chit-chatting about, this, that, and the other thing. And she mentioned a subject that I, cynical, bitter me, instantly thought, that is a great topic to discuss. Oh my God, that's going to be my topic for this week. And then woke up this morning and saw the events in Afghanistan, and I just wanted, one of those constantly researching, trying to figure out what's going to happen. News is coming in real time. Really can't track. I'm a little bit late to recording this today because there was supposed to be a speech given by the president at 5 o'clock, and it's 5:15 their time, and so he's late, and I'm just decided to hit record on this. And that's, if you noticed on my little teaser that I do at the beginning, I was really grave and serious, which is not really me, but just because of the events of that thing, I was trying to come up with one of those little hooks that's going to get you to continue watching the video and hear what's talking about. What is this monster? What's going on? So. But we were discussing, me and my nurse friend, the monster that people have in their backyards. And they go out of their way to have a backyard with one of these monsters. And they actually pay extra to have this monster in their backyard. And it's called a swimming pool. All right. We're in Phoenix, Arizona. We have a lot of pools per capita compared to other parts of the country and whatnot. And we also have one of the highest rates of child drowning incidents because of these swimming pools. And it is a reoccurring thing. It's summertime. You're going to wake up and the news is going to be covering the latest kid they fished out of a pool. And the ER nurses and the EMTs and the fire departments who have to respond to these situations are losing little bits of their soul every time they have to roll out there. And we were having a conversation and, sort of clinical about it. And I asked her, when you roll into a situation like that and you're talking to the parents and you're trying to revive the child, and it's when did you last see your child? Oh, we haven't seen him for, 30 minutes or so. Everybody knows that kid is DOA, right? But they're going to go through the motions. and they're going to go through the motions. They're going to call the ambulance. They're going to put an oxygen mask on. They might even bag them and stuff. And they're going to take that child to the emergency room where the child will be pronounced. And the police officers can be notified and they can start the investigation. And I'm not saying that this doesn't have to happen, but there are things about this situation that people need to be more aware of. And we can go through the whole watch your children around water, get your kids into a swim class. And that's pretty much, how I was thinking this little podcast is going to be. And then this morning blew up. Wow. Sorry. Did not mean bad pun. And so I'm sitting there and I'm going through that kind of stuff and sort of my little funky mood. So I go and I record section 6, where we talk about due diligence in the contract. And part of due diligence in the contract, section 6, there's a specific paragraph in there talking about swimming pools. And so I explained section 6, really trying to temper it in because I'm trying not to go into a freaking rant about the whole thing, because this is, I'm taking these sections out and I'm putting them specifically independently on their own as a group, so you don't have to go through an entire podcast. You will be available to just go and get my sectional classes when it's all said and done. But one of the important things that is written into the contract, this is a buyer responsibility, is the buyer is signing a contract stating they will not occupy the house until that swimming pool meets state and local safety requirements. Right? It's contractual. It's there. And the reason why it's there is because the seller may or may not have been currently living in a house that is up to the current standards. They bought that house 20 years ago. That was the standards 20 years ago. Standards change. So it's the buyer's responsibility to make sure that that house that they're about to move into is meeting the current safety standards for having that pool. You can find all these things online. Your home inspector, when they do the home inspection, they will always, if there's something there that's not going through meeting standards, they call it out in the home inspection. And these are really important things to watch. Now, the latest case, I'm hearing these various cases of, it was a party, we just lost track of them for a couple minutes, right? There are other incidences that's going on, and it's really getting rough. So remember, your home inspector is going to go through there, and they're going to call out everything that that does not meet standards on that. But your house might have changed. You might have taken the fencing down. All right, you might be a retired couple who does not feel the need to have a 4-foot high fence and these gates and this and that and the other thing, and you take it down. But then your grandchildren come and visit. Or the kids next door wander in. Kids wander around. I can't tell you how many neighbors' yards I went through at various, stages of my life, invited and uninvited. So maintain the minimum standards. Maintain your state standards. Maintain your municipality standards. You might want to seriously consider getting one of those little alarms that float in the pool. And as soon as somebody hits the pool, the alarm goes off to let you know, hey, somebody's in the pool. And this also applies not just to children, but also to animals. Right? Co-worker here's sister and brother-in-law lost their puppy because the puppy fell into the pool. So really be safe around these swimming pools, guys. Keep an eye out for them. If you have any questions, I have multiple sources. You can leave a note below. I will start just sending you links. Go, hey, talk to these people. And your pool service company, if you're using one, should be able to come in there and tell you everything that needs to be done. All right, but let's try to go through a summer or two where we're not waking up hearing about the kid in the pool. Right? It's harsh on my buzz. So that covers the monster bit. Our numbers this week, like I said, are looking good. Let's get over to those. And then after the numbers, we're going to go straight to section 6, do a wrap up on the end. Thank you much, guys. And now the numbers for August 25th, 2021. Our actives this week are 6,856, which is up 79 from the week before. Of that 6,800, we have 2,497 new ones, which is down 107 from the previous week. Our pendings are at 1,988, which is up 15. Under contracts looking for backups are at 1,131, down 102. Our contracts with buyer's contingencies are at 102, which is down just 2 from last week, leaving us with 2,149 closed listings last week, up 49 from the week before, and coming soon to a market near you is 963. This is part 6 of the residential real estate purchase contract. This covers due diligence. Due diligence is where the buyer goes through the property and has their inspections done to see if it's actually a property they want to purchase. Remember that this contract is it is written as an as-is, where-is contract. So the seller upfront is not guaranteeing that they're going to repair anything or that everything is going to be working. They still have to disclose, what they know about the property. But this is the point in the contract where the buyer gets to go in there with their inspections and see what it is exactly that they're buying, so they're not purchasing a lemon. So Section 6 covers all of this, all right? And the first part of Section 6, paragraph 6A, defines what the inspection period is, all right? The boilerplate says that it's going to be a 10-day period. It does give you an option to go for longer periods than that. You see this more common in more expensive housing, mansions, some places where you might want to get an actual specialist in there. Let's say you want to get a contractor in to bid stuff out, and they got 14 days before they can show up. So or getting a quote on certain things. It's not uncommon to write in more than 14 days or more than 10 days on this, but the sellers and the seller's agent are going to have questions when this comes across. So during the time period where we're having really slow turnaround times and inspections, I used to write 15 days in here. Some sellers were completely okay with that. Some sellers would absolutely hit the roof and go, why do you need that much time? Couple reasons on that. One, sellers are concerned you're going to find something. And they think if you have more time to look for it, you're more likely to find it. One of the other reasons is that you will see wholesalers. And remember, a wholesaler is an individual who's not intending on actually buying the house themselves, or they're intending on getting it under contract and selling the contract to a third party. This 10-day inspection period is generally where most wholesalers will try to get their house under contract. They will use these 10 days to show the house, basically, to potential investors. So if you're sitting there and you're looking at an inspection period, let's say 30 days or something like that, they're almost trying to get the entire escrow period under a due diligence thing. That's a serious red flag. So don't be concerned if you see people writing in extra days on 10, but take a really good look and have a conversation with them. Hey, why do you feel like you need it? If they come back and say my favorite home inspector is not going to be available, inside of 10 days, or the buyer's parents aren't going to be available during the 10 days, that's an acceptable answer. So during this time period, going on in the rest of this, the buyer, and at the buyer's expense, they can't ask the seller to pay for anything, is going to conduct any other physical, environmental, other types inspections and investigations to determine the value and condition of the premises. If they want to talk to government agencies about zoning issues, if they want to talk to insurance agents, architects, the contractors we're talking about, this is a time period they do it in. There are also any codes that they're worrying about, any fire, health, safety codes, anything else along these lines. This is their time period, right? Verify anything that you read off the MLS, right? A lot of times, agents, when they put a property on the MLS, they're literally copying an older listing on it, and that could be 5, 10, 15 years old. So if you're very concerned that you want to be in a certain school district and the MLS tells you that it's in that school district, this is the time period where you verify, hey, yeah, I'm still going to be able to send my kids to the school district I want. Once again, we have another line in here talking about sex offenders and diseases and AIDS and all that other good stuff that cannot be disclosed, or can be disclosed but doesn't need to be volunteered. This is the paragraph where it's like, hey, buyer, this is on you. Make sure you're looking into it. There's also some boilerplate in here about the buyer's not going to allow any liens to happen to the property. They're going to pay any vendors that they come in there to inspect the property. They're also going to hold the seller harmless for any liability claims or damages and costs that the buyer might come up because of the condition of the house. And this buyer is also going to provide the seller and brokers copies of any inspection reports. All right, so the home inspection that the buyer is getting on this, they're going to provide this to everybody, including the seller. All right, so if the buyer comes back and says, "Well, we found issues," and the seller says, "Show me," the buyer is supposed to have already sent the home inspection over, and it'll be written out on that. So there's another line in here at the bottom where it says, "Buyers advised to consult the Arizona Department of Real Estate Buyer Advisory to assist in buyers' due diligence inspections and investigations." That is a very, very handy document to have. If you're one of my clients, I hand that to you the first time you see it. It's in a little package with a folder that I send over to you that has all of these documents, including the contract, and the buyer advisory is always included on that. I will include a link to this in the show notes below on this particular one, so you can sit there and look at it yourself. Now, due diligence section on this has a lot of bold, capitalized wording. All right, remember, when it's bold, when it's capitalized, when it's italicized, this is a contract yelling at you. All right, square footage is the first one they cover. All right, any reference to the square footage in the premises, both in real property and improvements thereon, is approximate. Right. If square footage is a material matter to the buyer, it must be investigated during the inspection period. The appraiser is also going to tell you what they think the square footage is. But if there is something that's a major concern to you, this is the time for you to do it. Case in point on these things, in certain counties, you can't have horses on anything less than a full acre. And in class, they tell you is the story about the guy who bought this property fully intending to have horses there, found out he was 40 square feet too short because of a issue that came up when they were actually drawing out and subdividing the property. And that was like the one lot in the entire area that could not have horses. They bought it thinking there was horses. All right. And so if you have like some sort of special need for special square footage, this is the time you're going to be hiring a surveyor to come out there and survey the property and measure it yourself with the home inspector. So next one on this thing is going to call out wood destroying organisms or insect inspection. What we mean by this is we mean dry rot and termites. Right? If this is an issue to the buyer, this is the time the buyer is getting an inspector going in there. So now, the next paragraph we have on here is 6D. That covers the flood hazards. Believe it or not, even though we are in a desert, we do have flood zones and areas in this in the city and the surrounding areas. You do not necessarily need to be right next to New River or the Salt River or anything like that to be considered in a flood zone. And as Anthem has shown us, this does happen. So during this time period, this is the buyer's responsibility during here to figure out whether or not they're in a flood zone. There are FEMA maps that you can find online with just some really quick Google foo. When you were calling during this time period to see if you can get insurance, and we're going to cover this on the next paragraph, your insurance agent will be able to search for you and tell you whether or not you're going to require flood insurance. Your lenders will require it as a part of the loan agreement. So this is the time period when this comes up, and the zoning moves. So the person you buying the house from might not realize they are suddenly in a flood zone, or they might think they're in a flood zone and it's no longer in a flood zone. So that's 6D. This covers that. Let's go down to the next page. This is the insurance thing. If one of the homework assignments that the buyer is doing during this time period is that they are actually calling up with their insurance agency, figuring out what the quote is going to be. Escrow is going to need that information to close. This is your time period where you can find out whether or not you can actually insure the property. Some property will not be insurable, mostly because of roofs. Some insurance agencies won't do particular breeds of dogs. So if you're running around with your 3 bull mastiffs and stuff like that, and your insurance company that you want to go with, because they're great on your car insurance, won't cover your homeowner's insurance, this is that time period you need to find all this out. So The next paragraph after that is a sewer or on wastewater treatment system. This is the buyer coming straight out and stating, hey, we've been told it's a sewer system, checkbox. All right, or it's a conventional septic system, or it's an alternative system. By having a checkbox in here, this, because not only is the buyer signing this document, but the seller is also signing it. All right, this is if the seller knows that they have a septic tank and they're coming in with a contract and the contract is saying sewer system, they need to call that out at that particular point, because otherwise, the seller's agreeing, yeah, there's a sewer system on there. So in the next part of this, right, is where it calls out if the sewer connection is a material matter to the buyer, it must be investigated during the inspection period. I have met people who bought a house who did not know they weren't tied into the sewer line until the septic system blew up on them. Right. So your home inspector, for an additional fee, and any plumbing service has this now, they can literally run a camera down your sewer system. In certain neighborhoods here in town, I always strongly suggest that, especially lots with very, very large trees, especially pine trees, older neighborhoods where that might be an issue. As we're looking through the house, we're always in the back of your mind when you're looking at a house that's got a lot of trees on it, which direction is the sewer lines going? Is it going out through the back alley? Is it going out to the front street? The age of these sewer systems can become an issue, right? And they can get quite expensive to have to replace out. So at certain points, it's like, hey, pay the extra money, get the sewer system to come down. They run the camera down there. They'll tell you how bad the pipes are, if there's any roots. Nobody wants to have to replace the sewer system. So this is an important matter right here. And you don't have to all the time. I did hear a sort of horrifying story where it was a new build, and the home inspector was doing the inspection on a new build. We're talking the contractor was still building the house. They came in there right at the last moment to do the home inspection, make sure everything was up to snuff. The buyer paid for the sewer system scope. They ran the camera down there and realized that at some point during construction, somebody had run a cement truck over the loose dirt and broke the concrete sewer pipes. So, think this over, talk to your agent about whether or not it's a good idea for the house that you're currently purchasing. Now, swimming pool barrier regulations. During the inspection period, buyer agrees to investigate all applicable state, county, and municipal swimming pool barrier regulations and agrees to comply with and pay all costs of compliance with said regulations prior to occupying the premises. Let's call that out right there. Prior to occupying the premises, unless otherwise agreed in writing. If the premise contains a swimming pool, buyer acknowledges receipt of the Arizona Department of Health Services approved private pool safety notice. That is really, really important. And I just want to really emphasize one thing. The buyer is stating they will have the house complying before they move into it. Not before they purchase it, but before they move into it. This is to protect the seller and all other interested parties when the family moves into the house and we'll put the security gate up before, we'll put the security fence up before, and their housewarming party, a kid goes into the swimming pool and we have a bad incident. Right? This is the buyer stating really, really clearly in this contract, I will take care of that beforehand. So keep an eye on that. Notice that we think this is so important. There's an initial right by there, so the buyer can say, yeah, I actually read that particular paragraph, just like we had one up on the sewer system issue. Now, 6H is my second favorite paragraph of the entire contract. And it's all in bold and it's capitalized, so it's yelling at you. I'm not going to yell at you in this one, but I'm going to try to read it all out. Buyer acknowledgement. Buyer recognizes, acknowledges, and agrees that brokers are not qualified nor licensed to conduct due diligence with respect to the premise or the surrounding area. Buyer is instructed to consult with qualified licensed professionals to assist in buyer's due diligence efforts. Because conducting due diligence with respect to the premise and the surrounding area is beyond the scope of broker's expertise and licensing, buyer expressly release and hold harmless brokers from liability for any defects or conditions that should have been discovered by inspection or investigation. Buyer's initials required underneath. This is the real estate agent CYA paragraph. This and remember, I've said this before. The reason why this contract exists, every line in here is written in blood, sweat, tears, and lawsuits. And this thing is written by real estate agents for real estate agents. So that particular paragraph in there is to make sure that the real estate agent does not get sued, months after the closing when a buyer discovers something and tries to convince a jury or a judge. The real estate agent should have known about that. The real estate agent should have informed me about this particular issue and did not. Because of that, I took a loss and now pay me. So real estate agents are not the brightest people on the face of the earth. Seriously. We don't get contracting classes. We don't have plumbing skills. We can't look there. We're not trained in any way, shape, or form in any of our training classes how to inspect a house, how to look at a breaker box and say, okay, yeah, that's a good breaker box, or oh no, that's a bad breaker box. We do pick up stuff over time, osmosisly, listening, looking at home inspections, reading home inspections, talking to home inspectors while they're doing this stuff. So we can pick out a lot of things, but we don't know everything. So that's the reason why this paragraph is never, ever, ever fully rely on the judgment of your real estate agent, any real estate agent, including me, if we look at an issue and say, oh yeah, that's fine, or oh no, that's bad. That's what home inspectors are for. They're trained to do this kind of stuff. So that's the reason for that paragraph right there. Inspection period notice. This is paragraph 6I. All right. At the end of this whole thing, we've done our inspection period. We're getting close to the end of the 10-day period. We, on the buyer side, send over to the seller a document. And this document is called a BINSR, Buyer Inspection Notice and Seller's Response Form. It is a document where the buyer is saying one of three things about the property. Right. They'll either say, we love the property and we'll take it as is. We don't like the property anymore and we are pulling out of the contract. Or the third one, we found a couple things in the property and we'd like you, the seller, we're giving you the opportunity to correct these things. Let me show you this document real quick. All right, this is the BINSR. It starts with a contract dated. Call out the specific contract. It has a seller on there. It has buyer address, buyer on there, and it has a premises address. All right, buyer's making a lot of declarations on this thing. All right, right at the beginning, the buyer is saying, "I've inspected what I wanted to see." All right, everything that we just called out earlier in the paragraph or in the contract is all reiterated right here. All right, the buyer has verified all the information. Right, the buyer's acknowledging that they've done all the inspection periods that they wanted to do. Right? And then they have their three choices. Premises accepted, love it, we'll take it. Premises rejected, hate it, we're walking away. All right. And the third one, buyer elects to provide a seller an opportunity to correct the disapproved items listed below. And this was a lot more common many more years ago when we were not in such a hot seller's market, but this will be coming back and coming up with these items to be disapproved, the things that we might have issues. And it might be stuff that you don't realize, like garbage disposal does not work. Right? A relatively minor issue. It's a $75 part. Right. On the buyer side, never hurts to ask. On the seller side, do you really want to lose the contract because you don't want to spend $75 to replace a garbage disposal? And these lists can get pretty extensive, or they can be really easy. Some things might be just beyond the scope of the buyer to be able to fix it. You got a buyer who's moving in there. He has no handyman skills whatsoever. He does not have a toolbox. He does not know how to do anything. So he might come up with a couple lists of things that would like to be, they would like to see fixed. Now, one of the main disconnects on this particular item is the seller can state, okay, I will rectify that problem. The buyer cannot dictate how it's going to be rectified. That is important. A lot of people think that there's this sort of ad hoc or this ruling out there that says you have to use a contractor for the work. Right. If you notice in here, at no point are you going to ever see the words, seller agrees to use a licensed contractor for the work? They can use their cousin Bernie on the work. Right? The phrase you're going to see is in a workmanlike manner. Right? Now that's one of those beautiful little vague statements out there. Right? But it's just simply stating it's going to be done in a workmanlike manner, not a hired contractor or specialist came in to do it. So the buyer writes down what they think their issue is. All right. We can just put in something. Toilet rocks is not sealed in master bathroom. Right? Because shower diverter in master bathroom is leaking. Whatever they decide to put in this thing. Right? They're giving the seller an opportunity to fix these things. And the seller generally comes up and they can come back with a response. Now, as we scroll down, once again, we've written down everything that we want. Buyer acknowledges that brokers, once again, CYA on the broker, no representations concerning the competency of any inspectors, contractors, and or repair persons, and assume no responsibility for any deficiencies or errors made, not Ray's fault, and neither the seller nor the brokers are experts at detecting or repairing physical defects in the properties. The undersigned agrees to the modified or additional terms and conditions, if any, and acknowledges the receipt of a copy hereof. Buyer signs. Now, they also have this ability in here. If you get to the buyer, and we have buyers come across this all the time. I don't have a home inspection. I'm an expert in housing. And usually it's one of those, I don't need to hire a home inspector. My uncle's a contractor. And that's good. My uncle's a plumber. Great. He can take care of the plumbing thing. How is he on the electricity stuff? My uncle's an electrician. My aunt's an electrician. Okay. She may be an electrician, but does she know roofs? Right. But the buyer does have an option to waive the inspection, right? And this is the thing right here. This is another CYA. This is the buyer calling out. And it says these magic words, by acting against a broker's advice, right there. Right. And I always joke about this with my clients. If you're going to do something and you really get to do it, I'm going to tell you not to. And if you decide you're going to do it anyways, I'm going to put a piece of paper in front of you that says, Ray told me not to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. All right. This is the piece of paper that you're going to say you're going to do it anyways. All right. This is the buyer's going to accept responsibility and release, indemnify, and hold harmless brokers for any and all liabilities for all matters that professional inspections would have revealed. All right. And then we can't say that any strongly. Get a home inspection. If you don't want to get a home inspection by a licensed third-party home inspector, we're going to make you sign this document right here. All right. So we've done the home inspection. We found out about the rocking toilet. We found about the leaky shower diverter. All right. We send over to the seller, hey, seller, what can we do about this? And the seller gets to come back and say what they're going to do about it. All right. Now, we have a timing issue going on here because remember we had the 10-day inspection period, and then the Benzer comes across. We send this Benzer over. Seller has 5 days to respond back from when they get the Benzer. This allows them time to actually get quotes on the scope of work that's being requested, so they can come up with an educated response to the buyer side. And the seller is going to either come back and say, "We're going to correct those things. No problem. Check the first box." All right, seller is unwilling or unable to correct any of the items disapproved by buyer, which means no, we're not fixing any of that. What you going to do about it? And the third line on this thing is a seller's response to buyer's notice is as follows. And this is usually you see these things where you have what I call the shopping list. Right? You're talking there's 20 items in there that the buyer wants fixed, and it goes from little stuff like the shower diverter to, and we want a new roof, or and we want a new hot water heater. And we want a new air conditioner. All of these kind of things. So the buyer comes back with, this is what we're going to do. All right? I'll fix the shower diverter. All right? And you put every one of these things in line by line. You want to make sure everything is dressed that the buyer asked for up on this side. All right? So the seller's going to be coming back and saying, shower diverter, check. Get right on it. Toilet, have the same guy doing the shower diverter take care of that. No problem whatsoever. The roof, Not going to not going to deal with the roof whatsoever. Right? Hot water heater, we intend to replace it with a like capacity, low grade model. And it's really best if you put in there, we're going to, you got a 50-gallon hot water heater in there and it's electric. And it's at the end of its 6-year period. We're going to be putting in a new 50-gallon hot water heater, model number XK127, right, with a 2-year warranty. 2-year manufacturer warranty. You can actually get a 2-year manufactured warranty hot water heater. Saves you a couple $100. My 2-year hot water heater has been in there for 5 years right now. So your mileage may vary. And as for the AC unit, we will have it serviced. That's a proper response coming back. You didn't give them everything. You are giving them stuff. You're not doing the roof, right? You agree to replace the hot water heater. You'll have the air conditioner service. You're not replacing it. Okay? And you tailor your response back that way. Seller signs. Buyer gets a copy of this. All right. Now, when this thing comes back over, the buyer gets one or two choices. Now, this is if they didn't say, okay, we'll do everything. Buyer can elect to cancel the contract. No, we really want a new roof. We're walking out. Or the buyer gets to accept the seller's response. Right? It is a either or conversation on this one. Right? You don't actually, per this contract, you don't even actually get to come back and say, hey, how about we're okay with the hot water heater and whatever. So don't worry about that anymore. How about you really do the air conditioner? That kind of stuff. You don't get, we're not, let's make a deal over here at this point. Now, you are negotiating. Your two real estate agents should be talking. Before this thing gets over, the buyer's agent should have called the seller's agent up and said, hey, this is what we're looking at. What do you think? Right? But this is the response back. Seller accepts, buyers accepts the response, or the buyer elects to cancel the contract. That's it for the Binzer. Now, going back over here to the contract, everything that I've just told you pretty much is covered in 6J. This is more written out. Right? There are a couple things that aren't actually in the Binzer, right? But it will have the buyer's notice, buyers canceling the contract, right? Did the inspection, cancel contract. There are things that the buyer needs to do at that point. The buyer needs to specify why they are canceling. Roof is shot. We don't want to buy a house with a bad roof. Done. Right? If the buyer fails to state the reason why they are canceling, right? Cancellation will remain in effect. Buyer has failed to comply with a provision of this contract, and seller may deliver to buyer a cure notice stating, why are you canceling? Right? Now, if you noticed, back there at the Binzer, there was not a specific why they're doing that. Why are you canceling? Right? So the notice can actually be done on this point as a cover letter to it. Here's our Binzer. We're canceling. These are the reasons why. Right? That's notice. Right? Now, if the buyer fails to cure that, okay, and we're going to cover cure notices later on, but buyer cancels, seller asks why. All right? Buyer's got 3 days to come back with the reason why. All right? If not, the buyer is now in breach and the seller is entitled to the earnest money. All right? If prior to the exception of the cure notice, they send that email over saying, hey, we're dropping it because of the roof, buyer gets the earnest money. But, that's just to make sure, that just another hoop to make sure that the buyer is not just getting cold feet and deciding to come out there. And the seller doesn't even have to agree with the reason. All right? It is on the buyer's, what the buyer's expectation was, what the buyer is thinking, all right? But they have to give a reason. All right? Now, if they give the opportunity to correct the items, shower diverter, leaky toilet, that kind of stuff, the seller is going to respond in writing. Right? Here we are in bold text again. If seller agrees in writing to correct items disapproved, seller shall correct the items, complete any repairs in a workmanlike manner, and deliver any paid receipts evidencing the corrections and repairs to buyer 3 days or X amount of days prior to the close of escrow date, which conveniently enough is also your walkthrough period. Right. That's the workmanlike manner I was talking about. You're still not seeing anything about contractors in here. You're still not seeing anything about licensed professionals. All right. Remember, in the Binzer, when the buyer is making a statement, I want to see this resolved. The buyer does not get to state how it's getting resolved. That's the seller. The seller gets to say, I will resolve that issue my way. They're going to get all Frank Sinatra on it, all right? So as we come on these things, with this, we have a lot of conversation, a lot about this little area in there, right? And we still, even though we've been teaching agents for the last 20 years, and in the CE classes that they have to take every 2 years, we keep saying it. I will still consistently see, all right, a Binzer come across, all right, by a licensed contractor. Wow, it would have been great if you hadn't done that, because then I could just check yes, okay, we'll do everything. But because you put the phrase by a licensed contractor, we're going to come back and say nope. Right? Just understand that. All right. So if the seller is unwilling or able to correct any of the items disproved, buyers can cancel the contract within 5 days after delivery of seller's response or after expiration of time for seller's response. Whatever occurs first, earnest money is going to be released. All right. Now, 2 other little boilerplate things. Verbal discussions are not extending the time periods. If you're going to extend the time period, it has to be written as an addendum to the contract. All right. And buyer's failure to give notice of disapproval of items or cancellation of this contract within the specified time period shall conclusively be deemed buyer's election to proceed with the transaction without correction of any disapproved items. Right. You have 10 days. Use your 10 days, right? You do not get to take 11 days. You do not get to take 12 days. That Binzer needs to come across by 11:59 on the night of the 10th day. Right. If not, you have effectively waived your due diligence period. Now, the rest of this section, due diligence, is buyer and seller advised to investigate home warranties. If the buyer wanted to buy a home warranty, if the seller wanted to give him a home warranty, it's written in the contract that the buyer gets to put it in right here at the end. Home warranty, somebody gets to order it, either the buyer or the seller. They get to pick optional coverage, because there's a lot of places out there will not cover the second refrigerator in the garage. Swimming pool might be a special coverage. All right, to be issued by whatever the company the buyers decided to go with, at a cost not to exceed whatever the amount is going to be, to be paid for by the buyer or seller or split evenly. Right. Buyer also has an option to decline the purchase of a home warranty plan. We have the initial there. All right, so the buyer later on cannot come out and say, I was never offered the option of a home warranty. Or I wanted to order a home warranty and nobody ever told me when to do it, and one did not get purchased. Because buyers will sit there and say, oh no, I don't want a home warranty. It's a racket. They think that their home insurance is going to cover an issue. And then the home insurance does not cover the issue because it'd be a home warranty issue. And there is no home warranty. And next thing you know, they're pointing their fingers at everybody but themselves. So this is, as you see us moving out of the seller's market and into a more buyer's market, right, you'll start to see sellers just throwing out there in the MLS, we are offering a Old Republic home warranty package, for $550. And then the buyer's agent is going to fill all these things in there. So, and sometimes you can actually see back here when we're doing the inspections, that is an acceptable response from a seller to a buyer. Right? If the buyer is showing concern, it's like, hey, you know what? If you're worried about the hot water heater, which is currently functioning right now, it's just past its expiration date for the warranty. How about we'll buy you a home warranty? You'll have an effective another year on it. All right? So that's an option. Another line on here, walkthroughs. This is the seller granting the buyer and the inspectors reasonable access to conduct the walkthroughs of the premises. All right? This is why, this is... and the other thing that is very important is that during the inspection period, they are going to, if buyer does not conduct such a walkthrough, buyer releases the sellers and brokers from liabilities for any defects that could have been discovered if they had actually walked on the property. This is really important for, buyers who are buying houses sight unseen. So, the sellers have a responsibility during the walkthrough. They need to make the house available upon reasonable notice. Definition of reasonableness changes. 30 minutes before you show up is not considered reasonable. calling the day or two before saying, hey, I got my home inspector coming is considered reasonable. Right? And that the seller needs to have all the utilities on at their expense until close of escrow. Right? A lot of sellers will like to turn the utilities off. Well, when the home inspector is going in there, he's checking all the appliances. He's checking to make sure the hot water heater works. He's checking to make sure the dishwasher works. He can't do that if you've turned off the utilities. So the seller is responsible for turning off, keeping the utilities on all the way through close of escrow. Right? And one last thing on here is the Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act, or FIRPTA. All right, provides that if a seller is a foreign person, if a buyer of residential real property must withhold federal income taxes up to 15% of the purchase price, unless an exemption applies. If FIRPTA is applicable and buyer fails to withhold, buyer may be held liable for the tax. Buyer agrees to perform any acts reasonable or necessary to comply with FIRPTA and IRS reporting requirements, and buyer is responsible for obtaining independent legal and tax advice. This is because the IRS decided when they wrote the law about how are we going to deal with people who are not U.S. citizens but are selling U.S. property and running over the border back to Canada or wherever they came in from without paying their proper taxes on it. They put the onus on the buyer, and they basically handed the buyer the bill. Right? You buyer, you are responsible for this. And the reason for this is that the IRS can lien the property. So once again, this is all handled by escrow. We covered this a little bit back when we were talking about escrow, but escrow is going to do all of this for you in the background. But it's something as a buyer who is purchasing a house from a foreign seller, you're going to want to make really sure that escrow does their job on this. Right? So that wraps up disclosures. Next week we're going to be discussing remedies. This is what happens when things start going crossways. Right. We're going to discover about cure periods, breaches, dispute resolutions using the process we have, things that are considered an exclusion, and who pays when somebody wins or loses. So this is the end of episode 30. So next week, the contractor part we're going to cover is section 7. Then after that, we have 8 and 9. 8 and 9, I'm going to try to blend into the same one. So we're looking at only 2 more of these things. We'll get off to. I have to come up with some other content to start filling in here, but going to set an alarm to make sure I actually catch Tina's market update and everything on Monday, so I don't miss it like I did this time. Sorry for that, guys. And have a great weekend. Watch your kids around the water. Maybe take them swimming and teach them how to swim. And have a good weekend, guys. I'll talk to you later.